In this video, I want to give you a technique for writing a love story that isn't corny. I was inspired by a comment someone left under a previous video asking how to do this. I thought it was a good question, and I thought the answer would be rather easy, but actually surprisingly difficult. And I eventually found the answer in the most surprising of places, a 16th century manual on witchcraft called The Discovery of Witchcraft. And within its pages, I found this technique which helps avoid corniness in writing love stories, but also applies to all sorts of stories. But trigger warning, it involves doing something rather unsavory to the god of love, Cupid. So welcome to another installment in my series on how to write your novel using that most unlikely of writing implement, a round Oxford bus ticket. For inspiration, I've taken the bus to the high street and wandered over to this place, the Bodleian Library, home to the first edition of Reginald Scott's The Discovery of Witchcraft, published in 1584, at a time when the persecution and execution of witches was at its height. Now, to see what it's got to do with corniness in love stories, we first need to arrive at some sort of rudimentary definition of corniness. At first, I thought it had something to do with over-familiarity of tropes, things we'd seen time and time again. But then I remembered that Leonard Bernstein's West Side Story was really Romeo and Juliet transferred to the rival street gangs of New York's Upper West Side. And even Shakespeare didn't invent the tale, he lifted it from a version of an Italian tale called Giulietta and Romeo. And then that wasn't new either, it came in a long tradition of tragic romances set amid feuding families. And then I remembered that Pride and Prejudice and Jane Eyre are really complicated versions of Cinderella. It seems that all great love stories are made from the same ingredients, and we don't mind at all. In fact, we demand it. These tropes are the grammar of storytelling. To see where corniness creeps in, we first need to start with a rudimentary definition of a love story, a formula. And I think there are four main parts. Firstly, we have the lovers who are meant to be. Now, we intuit very early on when we read a story who the lovers are meant to be. They are ordained by fate somehow. There's some invisible, metaphysical force bringing them together. To see what I mean, consider Romeo and Juliet. When Juliet's mother tells her she's to be married to Paris, the nurse is thrilled at such a wonderful match, isn't she? But we're appalled because deep in our heart, we know that Romeo and Juliet are meant to be. Now, you might think, well, how on earth can I get an ineffable, mysterious, metaphysical property like that into my story? But I would say, don't worry, because I've done a whole video on this specific subject. It's about what's called Hemingway's iceberg, and I'll link to it below. But suffice to say that if you do multiple drafts of your story and get to know it really deeply, then this quality will naturally inform the story and the readers will intuit it. Next we have the impediments to love. Having set the lovers up to be metaphysically entailed, our job as wicked authors is to do everything in our power to stop them being together, to thwart them. Now as I see it, there are two types. So there's the big picture and the small picture impediment. The big picture one is the one that overarches the entire story. In Romeo and Juliet, it's the fact that they're from feuding families. In Lady Chatterley's Lover, it's because Lady Chatterley and the gamekeeper are from opposite ends of the social spectrum. In Pride and Prejudice, it's their own internal character flaws which prevent them initially from being together. And then we have small impediments. This can be almost anything. Misdirected love letters, misunderstandings, rival lovers, shipwrecks, illnesses, you name it. You've seen them all before, and you don't mind a bit. And, of course, don't forget to add occasional glimpses of hope so we can dash the hopes. And then comes the ending. Well, that's pretty straightforward, isn't it? It's either happy if they get together, tragic if they don't, or sometimes it's bittersweet or ambiguous because we don't find out, as in the movie Lost in Translation. Well, so far so familiar. And remember, familiarity is not the problem. So what is the problem? Well, I think corniness creeps in when we sense the writer's intention is insincere. What do I mean by that? Well, to research this, I watched a few Meg Ryan movies, and one, City of Angels, in that one she plays a surgeon and she loses a patient on the operating table, after which she has a strange meltdown, and she says, "The room got so big and I was so small. How come I was so small?" And I thought, that's not how surgeons react in real life when they lose a patient. That's how they behave in movies and books. It reminded me of something Elmer Leonard once wrote in his 10 Rules of Writing. He finished with an 11th rule, which was, avoid writing that sounds like writing. It's a great phrase, I think, because we know intuitively what it means. And when Meg Ryan has that, "the room got very big" spiel, it sort of stops me in my tracks and draws attention to itself. At this moment I can sense the author's intent to manipulate me. I feel as though I'm having my emotional pocket picked. But there's a paradox here, because we want to be manipulated. That's what stories are. We willingly allow the author to beguile us into a guided dream in which we all experience all manner of wonderful things, and joy and terror and fear and love and heartache. That's what stories are all about, and we're accomplices in it. We know it's happening. It's like watching a conjuring trick. We know the conjurer is not really sawing his assistant into 2 pieces, but we willingly allow ourselves to be fooled into believing that he is. And this is where Reginald Scott's The Discovery of Witchcraft comes in. In the century of its publication, over 1,000 witches were executed in the British Isles, not all burned, some were hanged. But Scott was no witch burner. In fact, he was ahead of his time, an enlightened man, and he argued that witches weren't really in league with Satan. They were just eccentric and harmless old ladies with cats. And to prove his point, he analysed the work of the conjurers who played at county fairs, cutting people in half and all sorts of tricks. And the common people supposed that they were using magic too. But Scott showed how the tricks work. His book was the first compendium ever of conjuring tricks. He showed how they used sleight of hand and psychology and illusion. And writing is a conjuring trick in a way, isn't it? And this is the point, this is the problem. What's the cardinal error for a conjurer? Getting caught. When we see the sleight of hand, when we see the wires, the pulleys, the mirror, the dream dies, the illusion dies, the spell breaks. And this, I think, is what happened with Meg Ryan. As soon as she starts that room is very big routine, it stops me and the illusion fails, the dream dies, and I groan. And this for me is the essence of corniness. So how do we avoid it? Well, I'm going to give you one simple, straightforward, actionable tip. We strangle Cupid, and I'll show you what that means after this short commercial break. It's time we talked about the philtrum. That's the groove that runs from your nose to your top lip, the one that channels the mucus from your nose onto your hot dog. It's actually a fossilized echo of a great turning point in history. Long, long ago, a fish dreamed of writing a novel, so he crawled out of the ocean onto land, and his descendants grew legs. But he needed a face, so the gills turned into ears. The top and sides of the fish face migrated forward to form a human face, and all 3 bits met at the philtrum. Well, that was 370 million years ago, and you still haven't written that damn novel, have you? Get my free novel writing email course. The link is in the description below. In the movie City of Angels, Meg Ryan and Nicolas Cage fall in love very quickly, very easily. It's as if they've been struck by Cupid's famous arrow. But it's not very satisfying. I think, for a real love story, we need to strangle Cupid and replace him with the tropes of lovers who resist, a battle that culminates in what I call the Julia Roberts moment. Now, in Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing, the lovers are Beatrice and Benedict, but they don't seem to like each other very much. They spend the whole of the first half of the play mocking each other, scorning each other, and pouring scorn on the very notion of love and marriage. Of course, we, the viewers, intuit straight away that they are the lovers who are meant to be, and they're setting themselves up for a magnificent fall. But their friends play a trick on them. They stage overheard conversations. So Benedict overhears a conversation in which he learns that Beatrice loves him, and Beatrice overhears a conversation in which he discovers that Benedict loves her. And what happens? They fall in love. Or rather, they acknowledge or recognize the feelings that were there all along, but which they kept buried. And we realize, and this touches us, because we realize that all the sparring and the banter and the mockery was defense. It was to prevent them both from getting hurt, from falling in love, from opening up and showing their vulnerability. And we salute the courage this takes. The comedian Jim Carrey once said that depression is the body's way of saying it's sick and tired of playing the role it's been forced to play all its life. And we do this, don't we? We adopt a facade or a persona to avoid getting hurt. But really the magic happens when we drop the facade. In the movie Notting Hill, Julia Roberts plays a famous actress, a movie star, famous and glamorous and much loved. But the pivotal moment in the movie happens when she appears before Hugh Grant in his shop, and she tells him the fame thing, it's not real. She says,
I'm also just a girl, standing in front of a boy, asking him to love her.
This is the moment she relinquishes the irony. She drops the facade and reveals the little girl inside, the wounded and vulnerable girl. And when she does that, something really magical happens. It touches us deeply. We take her into our heart. And then what happens? We root for her. And I think that when you root for a character like that, all possibility of corniness is banished. Well, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe. And if you'd like to know the simple novel writing hack I wish I'd known when I started out, take a look at the video that should be on screen now.